The author mentions some exceptions on page 8. The first exception is that you're traveling. So while you're traveling, you are not fasting, because you're a traveler, and a traveler doesn't fast. Unless you're a frequent traveler, of course, that would be a different case. But a normal traveler would have to break their fast. Now you arrive the city limits of your hometown before dhuhr. Let's say dhuhr is at 12 p.m. At 11 a.m., you arrive the Detroit metro area. Now, at 11 a.m., it's the month of Ramadan, you realize you didn't eat or drink anything since dawn. Or a more realistic example, you come back to your city at 7 a.m. Fajr was what? At 6 a.m. It's been an hour, so you didn't really eat or drink anything. You got to the limits of the metro area, it's at 7 a.m. You didn't make the niyyah to fast that day. Why? Because you're traveling. How can a traveler fast? When you reached your city limits, if you did not eat or drink anything, you make the niyyah to fast now. And that qualifies as a valid fast. Even though for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours, you didn't have the niyyah to fast. That's an exception. That day would qualify as a valid day in the month of Ramadan.
So it must be before Salat al-Dhuhr.
It must be before dhuhr. Yes, that's the cutoff time. That's the cutoff point. If you arrived after dhuhr and you were traveling, you can't fast that day. That day is not a day that you can observe the fast of. But if you arrived before dhuhr, and remember, you didn't eat or drink anything. If you ate on the way, that's it. You can't fast that day. But if you didn't eat or drink, you can actually keep the fast on that day.
You have to.
What's that?
You have to, but you can.
Yes, of course. See, the ruling over here is, before you get to your city limits, let's say you're on the plane flying from New York. Now you know you're going to arrive before dhuhr, but you're traveling on the plane. Can you eat on the plane or no? Yes, you can eat. But if you ate and you get to your city limits, you can't fast. However, let's say you didn't eat, you didn't drink. Then at 7 a.m. you got to Detroit metro area. In that case, you have to fast that day. Of course, it's no longer optional. If you didn't eat or drink while traveling, and you got to your destination, to your hometown, you have to fast that day. Yes, what was optional was what? On the airplane, when you were traveling, if you wanted to eat or drink, that was optional to you.
Or we can travel 16 miles away from your city again.
Yes, one can travel again, definitely. So if you get to your hometown before noon, you fast that day. So this is one exception, where you didn't do the niyyah at Fajr, but because it's an exception, we have a hadith from Abu Basir, one of the companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He asked the Imam about this scenario. The Imam alayhi salam tells him very clearly that as long as this person did not eat, did not drink, before dhuhr, before zawal, they arrived their city, they fast that day. This is one exception. Another exception, if you were ill, a person who's sick has no right to fast during the month of Ramadan. And if they fast while they're sick, they're ill, that fast is invalid. And it's an act of disobedience. Because the body is an amana that Allah has entrusted us with. Violating the rights of this body is a sin in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you are offering an act of worship which is violating that right, that act of worship is not accepted. Some people think, if I'm sick, it's okay, I should handle more pain. Allah will give me more ajr. Out of ignorance, they'll fast, only to discover that their fast is invalid. You had no right to fast that day. If that fasting was harmful to your health, if you had a sickness that prevented you from fasting, yet you fasted. So now let's say someone at 8, 9 a.m., they felt so much better that they figured they could fast that day. They recovered from whatever sickness they were experiencing. Now, if this person did not eat or drink anything after Fajr, and they realize that now their health is stable enough for them to fast, you can make the niyyah of fasting, and that fasting would be qualified. So your niyyah came after Fajr, but this is an exception. At Fajr, you were kind of sick, right? Let's say you were even sleeping. You didn't realize what's happening. But then when you wake up after Fajr, you realize, you know what, I'm feeling better today. I think I can fast. You can make the niyyah and you can fast. So this is the second exception that the author talks about. Any questions on this exception?
So what's the requirement not to fast if you're sick? I mean, how we know?
We'll talk about that. The author will dedicate a specific chapter to that. To what extent should a person not feel well so they can break their fast? What about, for example, a woman who's pregnant or breastfeeding? This is an entire discussion that the author will examine later. Yes, sister?
It was about this.
Okay, so we'll postpone that till we get to that chapter.
What if you have a regular cold? Is that?
We'll examine that. To what limit does one's health become a barrier to fasting? We'll talk about that in detail, inshallah. Because scholars, sometimes they do have some differences of opinion. So the third exception is the one that the brother referred to. Let's say you don't know that today is the month of Ramadan. You were not aware. And then someone tells you, you know what, today is the month of Ramadan. Or you just suddenly realize, you look at your calendar, that today is the month of Ramadan. So if you have not eaten or you did not consume anything, you can fast that day. That qualifies as a fast. And we have actually a hadith about that that's attributed to the Prophet